Cool, so here we are at the top of the landing area where basically I feel part of this slide was exacerbated from the material that used to be where I'm standing. You can see the area gets rather narrow here. We've got these buried boulders here, and we've got these buried chunks of wood. We've got some stumps that have been pulled from the first harvest, and you know, because this is the third generation of trees growing in here at this point, this 30-year-old stand that we're in. So it's been logged twice before. This is kind of, we're basically standing in the road, old road prism here. You can see here we've got we're kind of actually down into the glacial till area, but here's an old piece of wood that was buried. You can see all the salmonberry here, and now it's extremely flat in here. So there's a bit of a spur road that goes out that way, and there's a spur road that goes out this way here. And so at this junction of these roads, and you can see obviously the landslide started above us here. We're not even at the top yet, but here's a piece of the old culvert that used to be, you know, essentially where we're standing here. And so the slide now I'm finding out was not caused by this road and this old landing. However, it did stop the movement of all this material above it here. If you can imagine, the slide happened up there. It looks like it's close to where that log is going across the stream here, and this is an old stream bed now. However, it doesn't look very much different than the road bed down below, except that it's narrower, you know, and you have these old growth stumps on either side of it here that you wouldn't be able to drive a log truck through. So we know that this is where the road stopped. And now you might be able to see better here how there's not much vegetation in this old road bed. It's mostly alder and salmonberry, and that's because road beds are really difficult for trees to establish, especially conifer and stuff. So you're just getting those weedy species or the pioneering species of the red alder and the salmonberry. So you can also see here more compacted glacial till with well, now with cobbles on top. Again, here we're probably got a mix of material that was already in place, but then some that alluviated that came down from the top of the slide that's here now. And so when that was happening, this was building up along this road and the landing area here, where, if you can imagine, there was a bunch of logging debris stacked up here that is no longer here, that is now down at the bottom of the road. And this built up pressure and built up pressure and built up pressure until the road gave away. And then that was probably the larger blast of material that, you know, widened out that whole section down there. Because as you can see here, there's a lot less energy going on with this slide. It's narrower, and so I'm imagining the natural slide above us here happened, slid down into the road, and then, you know, I don't know whether it was days or weeks or what, but then you know, exacerbated this whole old landing area into a major freight train that just shot down the old road that went down that way. And again, obviously, you know, that road, way too steep to drive a truck, especially a log truck up. And so you can imagine a lot of material has been washed down and out, landing down at the road where we drove in on. Okay, folks, here we are at the top of the landslide here. This is what we would call the Scarp. It's the exposed face of where the failure started. And you can see the material in here is old logging debris again. Like I've been mentioning before, down at the bottom, we could see old logging debris. Logs that have been sitting either in the road prism or on top of the surface that made it all the way down there. And we also have now confirmed there were 2 different landing sites that you know, had impact on this landslide here. You have this huge Volkswagen size, like Beetle size boulder that probably hasn't moved too far, but it did, you know, it may have slid out of here. And then we've got this exposed bedrock here that some of it's bedrock as far as basalt, some of it's sandstone. It's a mix. And then you've got your unconsolidated glacial till glacial outwash soil above that. That's about 2 meters before you get to your O horizon on the top. But you can see the horizonation there pretty clearly. The O, or all this organic matter, the trees, and then into an A horizon that's about 4 inches deep or so, but discontinuous kind of, you know, through here. There's a huge rock up there too. Looks like basalt. And then you also then you have this unconsolidated glacial outwash material. It's all rounded rock, and then it hits this here. And my whole way up here too, I'm hitting all these seeps and a lot of devil's club on the side of this area here, and also a lot more of that impervious material of the compacted glacial till mixed with the bedrock, mixed with sandstone. And so you know, especially down here, it really takes off. And if you can imagine, you know, over time this got all saturated. The 2 meters of sandy soil got saturated with rainwater over these last storms that we had this past winter, and built up weight, and due to gravity and partly this old landing here too, putting a little bit more extra weight on it. If you can imagine those large waterlogged logs up there, and then it steepens off here, and this area down here gets kind of, has a little bit of a bowl to it, and it's wet, seepy. With all the rainwater that came in this last winter, the influences from the sides, from the seeps, and the influence of this compacted glacial till material here, and the basalt and sandstone that we're running into, you know, just underneath 2 meters or so of your typical Pacific Northwest or Washington State soil. That's, you know, 2 meters of very well drained soil that, you know, once it hits this impervious surface and you build up that mass and weight of this area here, and then this gives way, and then it just starts pushing everything in front of it like a big, huge bulldozer. And so, you know, thinking back in time too about how this, you know, this whole area was made and influenced by glaciers, you can imagine, you know, over time, these processes happening over and over and over again. And it really, you know, when you see something fresh like this, it kind of drives it home, you know, how these different processes of landslides and glaciers and these rivers and streams, and how, you know, they were once lakes, and, you know, in the lower areas. This obviously wasn't. We're not finding any lake sediment here. But, you know, this stream here, this is not the first time this has probably happened on this stream, and it probably won't be the last. And, you know, we can say that the logging did have a certain influence on it, and it certainly did. However, you know, it was not necessarily the cause, in my opinion. You know, we had an extremely wet winter, and another thing to point out is that if this would have happened without any of the influences of the roads below it, you know, to be honest, the landslide might have gone even further down the road. But the two roads, logging roads that got in its way, helped slow it down. And even though that the bottom logging road there is one that we're interested in using in the near future, so we've got to go down there and fix that. There's not much we can do, you know, going out that way until we do. Here's a nice piece of quartz. So anyhow, I'm gonna head down the hill now. We've made it to the top. I don't want that boulder to fall. That's gonna fall eventually one of these days. That's gonna make a loud noise. And you can see that's part of the old landing there, probably that guy sticking up. However, this cedar tree was recently living. That was one that was taken out, but you've got these old stumps here that are still intact, still holding on to some soil. And then actually, when we get down to that area where I was previously with a huge sheet of impervious material, you can see, and here's a nice seep coming through here. And so we're starting to build up again more water. It's getting damper in this area, hits that sheet of material down there, and just starts eroding basically the soil, you know, that's even in the stream bed. But the soil from there and the soil from the bank here all influence and built up energy, you know, and weight, and then just gave way and slid on down. So